What's up mga ka-try? I am your host Patrick and I am back again with some quality art content. Let's get started. So for the past episodes, we've been talking about drawing a lot, especially drawing with pencil. How about we put some colors in our life? And a good place to start is with colored pencils. Kasi if you can use a pencil, you will get the hang of using colored pencils in no time. And as simple as they seem, they are a fundamental part of any art kit. I've used colored pencils before, and they are one of the most popular art mediums for a reason. They are fun to use, and you can even use them professionally. Many pros use it for their work, and they are very popular with the kids or with the young artists because they are easy to use. And speaking about young artists, we have featured lots of awesome artists in our show. And it's time to feature some young talent. And yan ang magiging guest natin for this episode. And we'll have a young artist and he will teach us how to use color pencils. Sino yung young artist na yan? Let's get to know him.
Hey, I'm Brixel, I'm 15 years old, and I am a realism and doodle artist. Ever since I was 4 years old, I loved drawing cartoons and anime characters. But when I reached around 10 or 11, I tried different art styles, and the one I liked was realism. I remember watching a lot of YouTube videos on how to draw or how to shade and stuff like that. I use color pencils and graphite pencils, but my favorite medium to work in is color pencils. I usually draw face portraits, but from time to time I like to also draw animals. My biggest influences in drawing is Drawholic and Christy Partridge on YouTube. Every time they post a video, it always inspires me to make more art. An advice that I would give to artists that watch the show is to take your time. Even in any art style, taking your time will really help. A lot of art mediums take a long time to use, especially color pencils, but when you take your time, you'll be more satisfied with your artwork and you will improve much faster. In today's video, I will be teaching you 3 important steps in using color pencils: choosing the right colors, layering, and blending. Now before we use the color pencils, of course we need our initial sketch. There are a lot of methods in getting proper proportions in your sketch, like the grid method or the freehand method, or using guidelines like we saw in the last episode. And remember, the sketch is very important because it is the main foundation of the whole art piece. For me, I use a compass to measure out the length or the width of the reference photo. And again, take your time and try to be as accurate as possible because this is a very important step in your art piece. Now that we have our sketch, we need to choose the right colors to use in our drawing. Well, if you take a look at this apple is red, right? Well, yes, but there is more to that apple. If you look really closely, you'll see red, some darker reds, some orangey hues, some green for the leaves, some darker green for the leaves, some blacks, some white highlights, some purple for the inside of the highlights, some pinks, and some more red. So to choose the right colors, you need to be more observant to what you see than what you know. And now that we have our colors, let's talk about layering. We layer our colors so that we can bring out the depth in the picture. When layering, I suggest holding the pencil further back to have a light hand to have more control over how pigmented or saturated we want the color to go down. For the first layer, we're going to layer down the base color or the main color of the picture. In this case, I'm layering down red. And the rule that you have to color in one direction, well, it is true in some cases, but in this case, you can really color in any direction because we are going to blend it in the end. Now that we finished our first layer, we can move on to adding more layers. Then, to add more depth, we start to add the darker parts of the apple. Again, lightly layering it on top of the base color. And once we start to put the darker areas, you can really start to see it already looks like it has more depth in it, or it looks like a round apple instead of a flat color. Then, I'd usually layer the other colors to match the colors in the picture. In this case, I'd layer some orange, some pinks, some lighter reds. Lastly, we can start to add the details and the highlights and some of the really dark shadows. Also, make sure your pencils are always sharp so that you'll not end up with those little white spots. Now I'm doing the highlights of the apple and adding some pinks, some grays, and some purples to match the picture. And with the leaf, I did the same thing, starting with the base color and then adding the darker colors. In this part, I drew the shadow under the apple by layering some blacks and some grays. Now we could stop here, but if you want to take your color pencil drawing to the next level, then we need to do blending. We blend the colors so that you don't see the harsh lines and the graininess of the drawing. Now there are a lot of methods for blending, but the method that I use is burnishing, which is basically going over the color pencils with a more harder stroke and more firm stroke. Of course, not to the point of tearing the paper, to flatten out the tooth of the paper to have a more smooth outcome. I recommend using a white color pencil, the one that doesn't have a lot of pigment in it, so that it doesn't show on the drawing when you burnish. So basically, just go over the drawing with the white color pencil and you'll see the difference of the non-blended portion and the blended portion. I would also suggest burnishing in circular motions or the opposite direction of the pencil strokes. After blending the drawing, you would lose the details, so I would retouch the drawing after blending or blend and then add the details. And there you have it, 3 of the most important keys and techniques in using color pencils. And of course, you can apply these techniques in animals or faces or buildings. And of course, you're not gonna get good at it in a short amount of time. You need to practice and get used to it and experiment more with layering your colors. But I can assure you that with the right mindset and enough practice, you can get better at using color pencils. If you want to check out my artworks, my Instagram is here. And I also have a YouTube channel where I post the process of my drawings right here. And I also want to thank our host, Kuya Patrick, for having me on the show.
So thank you, Brixel, for being in the show. And maraming salamat for that awesome tutorial. So guys, if you want to see his work, I encourage you to visit his Instagram and watch some of his videos in his YouTube channel. And before we end this episode, I would like to give a shout out to Ma'am Robin Dipasupil and her work. As you can see, she followed our tutorial last week about portraits. And maniniwala ba kayo guys if I told you na first time lang niya mag-drawing ng portraits? Kakatuwa. So maraming salamat ulit for sending your work. Paano ba yan? Tapos na naman ng another episode natin. And nga pala guys, medyo nauubusan na ako nung sasabihin. And mga pang-intro ko. So kung meron kayong mga suggestions na pwede ko sabihin or mga suggestions na pwede natin pag-usapan dito sa show, please comment down below. Kaya maraming salamat ulit guys and see you next week on our next episode.